Part 3. My High School. The Cultural Revolution 2. Chapter 13. A New Horizon. The Emergence of a Political Leader. 1973. The shift from childhood to adolescence can seem sudden, yet for me, it resembled quietly crossing an unseen threshold. One moment, I was a carefree boy, racing with friends through Shanghai's twisting alleys, and the next, I found myself dazed at the center of a grand political scene, swept along by the tumultuous waves of history. Shanghai 6th High School was just across from my elementary school on Sichuan South Road, barely 10 meters apart. It's rare to find an elementary school so close to its corresponding high school. Yet it felt like an insurmountable gap between the carefree joys of childhood and the harsh ideological realities of adolescence. While my elementary school had been a relatively gentle haven of innocence, 6th High stood before me as an imposing fortress of political indoctrination. The high school campus featured an intimidating quadrangle formed by 4 substantial red brick buildings, each somber and forbidding, enclosing a large central square as expansive as 2 basketball courts. This square functioned as our playground and as a stage for rallies, drills, and ceremonies held under watchful eyes. Within these towering brick walls, I first experienced the heavy burden of politics weighing down on my young shoulders, pulling me unavoidably from the simple joys of childhood into a world devoid of innocence. The East and West buildings were home to classrooms designated for other grade students, areas we seldom visited. However, the West building contained something even more captivating, an indoor gymnasium on its first floor. It soon turned into a haven for my basketball teammates and me, a secluded refuge from the unending political strife outside. Within these walls, under soaring ceilings and amidst the sounds of bouncing basketballs and squeaking sneakers, we practiced every day, discovering a rare place where we could feel unrestrained. Behind the striking South Building, another structure stood, a modest auditorium. Its terrazzo floors, smoothed by years of footsteps, softly echoed a long-lost elegance. While we often used it as a casual gymnasium for basketball and badminton, its true purpose lingered in quiet mystery, a forgotten remnant from a tumultuous past. However, I quickly discovered that Shanghai 6th High School was anything but ordinary. Just days after my arrival, I felt its red brick walls and stark facades held secrets deeper and darker than any youthful imagination could comprehend. One afternoon, just days into my new school experience, I was quietly collecting my books as class concluded when my teacher, Ms. Shen, approached with a relaxed, almost casual smile.
Chen Fengyang,
she said gently yet firmly.
Tomorrow, you will represent your grade at the school meeting.
I looked at her in shock. Me? I felt like a newcomer, still getting used to life after elementary school. Why had I been selected for an official school meeting? What could it possibly entail? Ms. Shen provided no further details, just a reassuring nod as if it were a simple formality. Yet, as I observed her leave, a sense of unease began to creep in. At the time, I didn't realize that this seemingly simple invitation was my first step into the core of the school's political machinery. And before long, I would find myself engaged in something much larger and more complex than I had ever anticipated. The following day, I found myself at a prestigious gathering, not only with teachers and school officials, but also among Shanghai's top Communist Party leaders. It quickly became apparent why. April 12th was a significant date in our school's history. On this day in 1967, Chairman Mao issued a directive regarding Shanghai 6th High School's initiative to unite the Red Guards movement throughout the educational institutes, instantly raising its profile to national status. Since then, the school has organized a commemorative assembly to celebrate this event. Today's gathering was unlike any typical school ceremony. Xu Jingxian, the influential municipal party secretary, essentially Shanghai's mayor during the Cultural Revolution period, was in attendance. I found myself breathless. The municipal party secretary himself? Right here, in our classroom? At 14, I struggled to comprehend the significance of this moment. Just a month ago, I played soldiers in air raid shelters, laughing and racing through the alleyways of Shanghai with my friends. Now it felt surreal to be part of a meeting with the city's highest-ranking communist officials, as if I had been called to the court of an emperor. The classroom accommodated around 20 participants, each sitting stiffly school leaders, esteemed faculty, and a chosen few Red Guards representatives. At the front, our school's party secretary, Mr. Hong, delivered an enthusiastic, lofty speech, extolling Chairman Mao's visionary revolution and accomplishments. His voice elevated with ritualistic passion, resonating with the well-known language of revolution. However, once he concluded, a profound silence enveloped the room as everyone gazed toward Xu Jingxian. Xu was clearly intellectual, speaking slowly and with intention. His controlled, thoughtful tone starkly contrasted with the passionate speeches and tumultuous energy of the Cultural Revolution. His calm presence was reassuring and disconcerting, like a peaceful island amid a violent storm. Once the meeting ended, everyone stood for handshakes. When Xu reached me, his grip was firm and deliberate. For a brief moment, our eyes locked. I felt my heart race, a surprising shiver of awareness coursing down my spine. Though I barely comprehended the full gravity of what had just transpired, I sensed that I had been chosen and trusted with something far more significant than myself. A subtle, invisible line had been crossed. My allegiance to the communist cause, to Chairman Mao, crystallized irrevocably. Soon after, I was officially inducted into the Red Guards, not merely as a member, but as the leader of my grade's unit. The party had undoubtedly singled me out. My life would change forever. At that time, I never wondered why Chairman Mao chose Shanghai 6th High. However, over the years, the reality slowly began to reveal itself. Shanghai 6th High was not just any school. Established by the Catholic Church in 1871 as the Xiaoming, meaning dawn, girls' school, it was founded 6 years after St. Joseph's Church was built directly across the street. It amazed me that my elementary and high schools have histories stretching back over a century. When these schools were first built, the Shanghai we knew, the bustling city with its iconic Bund, didn't even exist. Instead, the earliest foundations of modern Shanghai were laid by churches and missionary schools like mine. This revelation astonished me. My childhood schools were older than the city. Yet, with all the richness of its history, 6th Girls High was now ground zero for one of the Cultural Revolution's most notorious incidents. In 1967, as revolutionary fervor engulfed China, Red Guards from Beijing and the Harbin Institute of Military Engineering came to Shanghai. They aligned themselves with the Gulls Combat Team, a radical student faction at 6th Girls. What happened next was chilling. The Red Guards from the north were university students. They stormed the campus, mobilized the girls, and singled out the school's female party secretary, Xiao Ailing. Dragging her from her office, they bound her hands behind her back, brutally hacked off her hair, and forced her to kneel in humiliation. Amid savage beatings, they poured ink and tar over her, mocking and berating her relentlessly as she convulsed beneath the blows. Eventually, she collapsed, her head broken by severe neurological trauma. Yet the torture was far from over. She was hauled to the Shanghai Acrobatic Arena for another public denunciation rally. Thousands gathered, screaming slogans and hurling insults, stomping on her weakened body. Eventually losing consciousness, she was rushed to the hospital, barely clinging to life. The leader of 6th Girls High School at that time was Geming Jung, meaning Revolution Jung. It reminded my potential name before I was born. Names have consequences. This was the school I considered my own, a place where violence was once revered as revolutionary virtue, forever marked by Chairman Mao's acknowledgement. Unbeknownst to me, I had entered the same arena, not as an onlooker, but as an engaged participant in this disturbing political spectacle. From the second-floor balcony of the Red Guards headquarters, I looked down at the foreboding raised platform where denunciations had occurred, and sometimes pondered with unease. Is this where I'm supposed to be? When I began high school, I was immediately struck by the rigid military-style structure of the Red Guard organization. 50 students comprised each platoon, 12 classes forming a battalion, and the entire school constituted a regiment. Surprisingly, I was appointed battalion leader for my grade, given considerable authority. This position required regular meetings with school officials and the regiment's leadership to discuss revolutionary policies, coordinate ideological campaigns, and strictly adhere to the party's directives. At first, I felt completely out of my element. My introverted personality was at odds with the leadership role. However, as time passed, an unexpected transformation occurred. The platoon leaders began to appreciate my calm demeanor and valued my thoughtful approach. Slowly, I understood an essential lesson about leadership. Even someone as hesitant as I could develop into a role of authority. I often noticed a quiet, middle-aged female teacher wandering silently across campus during those years. She rarely spoke publicly, her presence awkward and almost ghost-like. Her face bore signs of nerve damage, one side swollen, an eye twitching involuntarily. Her speech was impaired, and she sometimes drooled uncontrollably. No one knew her, and no one bothered to find out who she was. Yet she was attending some of the school meetings I attended. Only years later did I piece together the truth. She was the party secretary who had suffered brutal torture at the hands of the Red Guards. Her suffering had brought infamy to our school. Yet we, the new generation of revolutionary youth, had been deliberately kept in the dark about these horrors. Understanding her tragedy ultimately led me to confront the violence within myself. How ironic, I reflected. In my childhood, I unknowingly opposed Mao by doodling in kindergarten. However, as I progressed through elementary and high school, I became a devoted follower, rising to a position of significant authority at one of Shanghai's most influential schools. Ultimately, I took on the leadership position for our grade, and later on, the entire school. We wielded considerable influence, often eclipsing even regular teachers. School officials, the workers' propaganda team, and the party secretary saw our opinions as vital, embodying the tenets of Mao's ideology. I stood before hundreds at school assemblies, announcing the latest updates on ever-changing government policies. Externally, I appeared powerful and respected. Internally, I felt uneasy. How did I find myself in this position? I had always loathed authoritarian bullies, yet here I was, having become one myself. Despite my inherent reluctance, teachers and leaders urged me to step up. Polite, compliant, and determined not to disappoint anyone, I embraced the role that was forced upon me. Soon, my responsibilities expanded beyond the classroom. I skipped classes to attend significant district and municipal meetings, delving into political battles often beyond my comprehension. During one particularly memorable small circle gathering, I was taken aback as my classmate's father, the Huangpu District Party Secretary, was ridiculed and compelled to denounce himself publicly as a counter-revolutionary. This shocking event left a lasting impression on me, deeply unsettling my sense of justice. I also attended mass trials at People's Square and Cultural Square, observing thousands cheering as political prisoners and common criminals alike were sentenced. Some were executed immediately afterward. Fear permeated society. No one knew who would become the next target. As I rose in politics, my academic performance declined. I had been an outstanding student all through, but the demands of my political commitments caused me to struggle academically. I remember the moment my mom looked at me in shock, seeing my first ever and only failing grade in chemistry, unable to believe that her once gifted son had faced such a setback. During this time, a quiet voice within me raised doubts. Did I genuinely support the violent zeal of the Cultural Revolution? Externally, I seemed completely revolutionary, yet internally I was torn. I grappled with deep questions about the cruelty, absurdity, and the very betrayal of humanity. As the movement progressed, I became increasingly aware of its contradictions, brutality, and moral decay. I began to distance myself from more involvement in politics by turning down opportunities that would have drawn me into more spotlight. This hesitation significantly restricted my influence, keeping me mostly within the school environment, an aspect I learned to value as my uncertainties increased. Looking back now, I recognize the profound paradox of my experience. Though I held leadership roles, I was also a mere pawn, simultaneously powerful yet powerless, influential yet manipulated. While at the heart of Shanghai's revolutionary movement, I had limited control over my path. Millions of students like me were swept up in Mao's grand ideological project, becoming both perpetrators and victims of a ruthless campaign. It would take years before I fully grasped what I had been part of. The immense human cost of blind obedience to ideology. My journey from an introverted boy to a Red Guards leader wasn't a story of ambition or idealism, but of circumstance, conformity, and eventual disillusionment. Even today, reflecting on those years fills me with complex emotions, guilt, regret, sorrow, and perhaps a quiet gratitude that despite being carried by that powerful tide, I never completely lost myself.